All right, Pouring Nation, I painted this beautiful painting the other day, and while I was doing so, I realized that the sides did not look near as nice as the top did. This dark purple looked beautiful here, but on the sides, even though I pre-painted the sides, you can see the color difference, especially on the bottom where there's no drips. And I think a lot of you guys have run into this same problem before. Now I am repainting over the top. You can kind of see how it's wet there and it looks a little bit brighter purple. This will dry very, very deep, a very saturated purple, but that didn't happen on the sides with this painting. And I just wanted to go through why that happens. So first of all, anytime you add pouring medium or water to a paint, it's not going to be as bright as it was. And the problem with the side of this is I painted this with paint that was already mixed with pouring medium, and therefore it's not as saturated, and I put it on a white canvas. So if I put a color that might have been opaque before, I added pouring medium so it becomes less opaque, more transparent, and less saturated. That's why I get the lighter purple color on the outside and why I'm having to repaint on the side. So to avoid that, when you're painting the sides of your canvas, use the paint, the direct paint, not the paint mixed with your pouring medium. And that will give you the most saturation possible. You still might have to do a little bit of a second coat. I used to paint apartments and even latex paint. If the color had changed even slightly, especially something like white to an off-white, we had to paint multiple times because the color just didn't cover really well. And that's the same thing with the paints that we're using here. If you're not being very careful or putting a ton of paint on, the color is just not going to fully cover everywhere. So use the direct paint, don't use the mixed paint. And I want to show you, I have this blue paint that I've mixed up here. I've mixed it up just with the regular blue paint. I've mixed it up with water, and I've mixed it up with a pouring medium. And you can see, I painted this black line just to kind of show you what the difference is. You can clearly see that the black line shows through, even though these paints aren't quite dry yet, the black line shows through where I have the mixed with water and mixed with pouring medium, but it doesn't really show through where I have just the straight paint. Again, that's just showing that anytime you dilute a paint with pouring medium or with water, you are losing some of the opacity. Semi-transparent turn transparent, opaque turn semi-opaque, transparent turn very transparent. So you need to keep track of that when you're doing it. So painting your sides, make sure you're doing that with the full paint and not diluted paint. In this case, you can clearly see here that I'm going to have to do a couple of coats to even make this get dark enough to matter. On the sides of your canvas, because you have gravity working against you, the paint is there, and then it's falling down, and then gravity is pulling as much of the paint off as it can. So there's not as much paint on the side. That's not the case for the top. Even though I poured the same amount on the top, some of it poured over the side, the top maintained some of that paint because I didn't sit there and let it drip off for hours, essentially. If you notice, when you have a painting like this, the drips happen, they keep forming for an hour after you've painted. That's why a lot of people come through and clean up their drips, because they don't want it to kind of pull the paint off of the top. But that just means that the layer of paint that's on the side will never be as thick as the layer of paint that's on top. So yeah, that's just another reason why you really want to paint the sides with as heavy a coat and as saturated a coat of paint as possible, so you don't run into this and it doesn't take you an extra couple weeks to make your painting look as beautiful as it could have from the get-go. And this is the video where Olga Sobi taught me her secrets to making beautiful acrylic pours like this.